The morning sun rose over New Geneva like it had for the past 73 years since humans first landed on this world. Sarah Chen stood at her office window, watching the farmers begin their day in the fields below. Wheat and corn stretched to the horizon, golden waves that fed dozens of human colonies across the galaxy. New Geneva was simple, peaceful. The kind of place where children could run through fields without fear, where neighbors helped each other during harvest time, and where the biggest worry was whether the rains would come on schedule. Sarah had been colony administrator for 8 years now. She knew every family, every farm, every problem that needed solving. Today's biggest issue was a broken water pump on the Morrison farm and a dispute about shipping schedules to the inner colonies. "Ma'am, we're getting some strange readings on the deep space sensors," said Marcus Webb, her communications officer. He was young, maybe 25, and had never seen anything more dangerous than a solar storm. Sarah looked at the data on his screen. "Probably just space debris. You know how it is out here on the rim." Marcus nodded, but his frown didn't disappear. "Yes, ma'am, but the patterns are odd. 3,000 light years away, in a secret military shipyard hidden in the shadow of a dead star, Captain Elena Vasquez walked through the corridors of humanity's most advanced warship. The ship had no official name yet. The military called it Project Defiance in their reports. But the crew had started calling her the Defiance anyway. Elena had commanded 17 different ships in her 20-year career. She had fought pirates, rescued colonies, and survived 3 major battles against hostile alien species. But she had never seen anything like the Defiance. The ship was huge, nearly 2 kilometers long and packed with technology that most humans could barely understand. The hull was made of metal that could heal itself when damaged. The weapons could change their type depending on what they were fighting. And at the heart of it all was an artificial intelligence that the tech teams called Darwin. "Good morning, Captain," said Darwin's voice as Elena entered the bridge. The AI's voice sounded almost human, with just a hint of something else. Something that suggested vast intelligence barely contained in electronic circuits. "Good morning, Darwin. How are our systems today?" "All systems operating at 97% efficiency. I have been analyzing combat scenarios and believe I can improve our weapons' effectiveness by another 12%. Elena smiled. Darwin was always trying to improve something. The AI had been designed to learn and adapt, especially during combat. Every simulation, every test, every piece of data made it smarter and more capable. "Captain," said Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "We're receiving a priority message from command." Elena read the message quickly. It was routine. More tests, more simulations, more waiting. The Defiance had been ready for combat for months, but the military leaders were afraid to risk their expensive prototype on anything dangerous. "Darwin, what do you think about our readiness for actual combat? I calculate that our systems would perform admirably in real battle conditions. However, I must note that my combat algorithms are still theoretical. Actual conflict would provide valuable data for improvement." Elena nodded. She felt the same way. All the simulations in the universe couldn't replace real experience. But command seemed content to keep the Defiance hidden away, running endless tests while other ships did the real fighting. 3 hours later, everything changed. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres's voice was sharp with alarm. "Emergency transmission from the outer rim. Colony designation New Geneva." Elena hurried to the communication station. The message was broken, filled with static and interference. But the words that came through made her blood run cold. "Under attack. Hundreds of ships. Never seen anything like them. Please. Anyone, help us." And the transmission cut to static. "Darwin, analysis. Based on the signal degradation and interference patterns, I calculate a 73% probability that New Geneva is under attack by a large fleet using advanced jamming technology. The distance suggests the attacking force is significantly larger than anything previously encountered in that sector." Elena stared at the star charts. New Geneva was at the very edge of human space, far from any military bases. The nearest patrol ship was weeks away. If the colony was really under attack, they would be completely alone. "Torres, send this up the chain of command. Priority Alpha." "Yes, ma'am." An hour later, the response came back. Elena read it twice, unable to believe what she was seeing. "Command believes the transmission indicates a minor pirate raid. New Geneva is not considered strategically important. The Defiance will continue current testing schedule. Do not deviate from assigned mission parameters. Elena felt anger building in her chest. 50,000 people lived on New Geneva. Families, children, farmers who had spent their lives turning an empty world into something beautiful. And Command wanted to ignore them because they weren't strategically important. She looked around the bridge at her crew. These weren't regular military officers. They were volunteers, specialists who had signed up to test humanity's most advanced warship. They could have requested transfers to safer assignments at any time. Darwin, how long would it take us to reach New Geneva? At maximum speed, 4 days and 17 hours. And what are our chances of making a difference if there really is a large attacking fleet? Darwin was quiet for several seconds, an eternity for an AI. Unknown, Captain. However, I calculate that doing nothing guarantees the destruction of the colony. Taking action provides at least some probability of a positive outcome. Elena made her decision. All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress call from New Geneva Colony. Command has decided not to respond. I'm asking for volunteers to disobey direct orders and take the Defiance to assist the colony. Anyone who wants to transfer off this ship can do so now, with no questions asked and no mark on their record. She waited. The bridge was completely silent. Lieutenant Torres was the first to speak. Captain, we're with you. One by one, reports came in from all sections of the ship. Engineering, weapons, medical, life support, and every single crew member voted to stay. Darwin, Elena said quietly, plot a course for New Geneva. Maximum speed, course plotted, Captain. I should note that this action will likely result in court-martial proceedings for you and the senior crew. Probably. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today we have a colony to save. The Defiance turned away from the Dead Star and began accelerating toward the rim of human space. Behind them, the secret shipyard grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Elena stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur into lines as they entered hyperspace. She didn't know what they would find at New Geneva. She didn't know if her career was over or if they were flying toward their deaths. But she knew one thing for certain. When 50,000 innocent people called for help, humanity answered. Even if it was just one ship with one crew flying against impossible odds. Darwin, run full diagnostics on all combat systems and start preparing your battle algorithms. Something tells me we're going to need them. Already begun, Captain. I find myself curious about real combat. The simulations have been educational, but I suspect actual battle will provide much more interesting data. Elena almost smiled at that. Even their AI was eager for a real fight. Maybe that was what made humans different from other species. They didn't just build weapons or ships or computers. They built things with the same stubborn, never-give-up attitude that kept them pushing into the unknown reaches of space. The Defiance flew on through hyperspace, carrying humanity's most advanced technology toward an unknown enemy. Whatever was waiting at New Geneva, they would face it together. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came at 3:47 local time, when every sensor on New Geneva went completely insane. Sarah Chen was asleep in her apartment above the administrative building when the emergency alarm started screaming. She rolled out of bed, grabbed her clothes, and ran for the command center. Outside her window, she could see people stumbling out of their homes, looking up at the sky with confusion and growing fear. Marcus Webb was already at his station, his face pale in the glow of his monitors. "Ma'am, you need to see this." Sarah looked at the main display and felt her heart stop. The screen showed space around New Geneva, but it wasn't empty anymore. Dots were appearing, hundreds of them, spreading across the star system like a disease. "How many?" she whispered, still counting. "Over 200 confirmed. They're big, ma'am. Really big." Sarah activated the colony-wide communication system. Her voice went out to every home, every farm, every building on New Geneva. "This is Administrator Chen. We are detecting a large number of unknown vessels in our system. All civilians should move to designated shelter areas immediately. This is not a drill." As if her words were a signal, the sky above New Geneva suddenly lit up with fire. The first alien ship to enter the atmosphere was a sleek, black triangle the size of a city block. It moved without sound, floating over the main settlement like a piece of the night sky that had come loose. When it began shooting, the beams of energy that came down were blue-white and terrible. The colony's defense satellites tried to fight back. They had been built to handle pirates or small raiding parties, nothing like this. One by one, Sarah watched them disappear from her screens as the alien weapons turned them into expanding clouds of glowing metal. "Get me the defense force," she ordered. Captain Rodriguez appeared on her screen. He commanded New Geneva's small military unit, 50 security officers with light weapons and 3 patrol boats that could barely make it to orbit. "Sarah, what the hell is happening up there? We're under attack. Large fleet, unknown species. Can you engage?" Rodriguez looked grim. "We'll try. But those ships, Sarah, I've never seen anything like them. Our weapons might not even scratch their hulls." Through the command center windows, Sarah could see the patrol boats rising into the sky, their engines leaving bright trails against the darkness. They looked so small compared to the alien ships, like insects flying toward giants. Aboard the alien flagship Absolute Dominion, War Leader Kithrix watched the human defenses with contempt. His species, the hegemony, had conquered 17 different civilizations. Humans were just the latest infestation to be cleaned from valuable planets. Kithrix was 7 feet tall, with gray skin and 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. His people had been warriors for 10,000 years, perfecting the art of conquest and extermination. This human colony would fall like all the others. "Status report," he commanded. "All ships in position, War Leader. Human defenses are minimal. A few satellites and 3 small vessels. They pose no threat." "Good. Begin orbital bombardment. Standard pattern. Destroy all infrastructure first, then hunt down the survivors." The hegemony fleet opened fire. The bombardment was methodical and terrifying. Beams of energy lanced down from orbit, turning buildings into vapor and carving deep gouges in the earth. The spaceport disappeared in a ball of fire. The main power plant exploded, plunging half the colony into darkness. Sarah watched her world burn from the command center's reinforced bunker. Reports came in from all over the colony. The hospital was hit. The school was destroyed. Fires were spreading through the agricultural districts. "Ma'am," Marcus said, his voice shaking, "I'm reading massive energy signatures. They're bringing in more ships, bigger ones." Through the smoke and fire, Sarah could see them descending, troop transports, each one carrying hundreds of alien soldiers. They were going to land and finish what the bombardment had started. "All security teams, fall back to defensive positions around the civilian shelters," she ordered. "And Marcus, keep transmitting our distress signal. Someone has to hear us." "Ma'am, I've been sending continuously, but we're so far out. The nearest patrol ship is weeks away." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 50,000 people were counting on her, and she had no way to save them. The hegemony was too strong, too advanced, too numerous. New Geneva was going to die, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But she would try anyway. That's what humans did. They fought impossible odds, and sometimes, just sometimes, they won on the surface. Captain Rodriguez and his security teams were setting up defensive positions around the underground shelters. They had anti-aircraft missiles and energy rifles, weapons designed for crowd control and minor threats. Against an alien invasion force, they might as well have been throwing rocks. "Listen up," Rodriguez told his officers. "We all know how this is going to end, but we're going to make those bastards work for it. Every minute we hold them off is another minute for the civilians to get deeper underground." The first alien dropships touched down in the ruins of the spaceport. The doors opened and creatures from humanity's nightmares poured out. The hegemony soldiers were 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. They carried weapons that could punch through steel walls and moved with the coordinated precision of perfect killers. Behind them came war machines, floating platforms loaded with heavy weapons and mechanical walkers that shook the ground with each step. The humans opened fire first. Their energy rifles lit up the night, sending red beams toward the advancing aliens. A few shots found their mark, but the hegemony soldiers barely slowed down. Their armor absorbed most of the damage, and they kept coming. The aliens returned fire, and the difference in technology became immediately clear. Where human weapons left small burns on armor, the alien weapons tore through cover like it was made of paper. Rodriguez watched 3 of his officers disappear in flashes of blue light. "Fall back. Fighting retreat to checkpoint 2. The battle for New Geneva had begun, and the humans were losing badly. But they kept fighting because that's what humans did. They protected their families, their homes, their way of life, no matter how hopeless things looked." In orbit, War Leader Kithrix watched the surface battle with satisfaction. The humans were resisting, but it wouldn't matter. His forces had done this hundreds of times before. By tomorrow, New Geneva would be silent, ready for hegemony colonization. He was already planning the next phase of the operation when his sensors detected something impossible. War leader, we have a problem. Kithrix turned to his sensor operator. What kind of problem? Single ship approaching from the outer system. Configuration unknown. It's moving very fast. One ship? Kithrix almost laughed. Against 300? Let it come. We'll destroy it before it gets close enough to matter. But something about the approaching vessel bothered him. The energy readings were unusual. The ship's design didn't match any human vessel in their databases, and it was approaching at a speed that should have been impossible for human technology. War leader, the sensor operator said, his voice tight with worry. That ship. I think it's military. Advanced military. Kithrix studied the readings more carefully. The approaching vessel was large, nearly as big as his own flagship, and the energy signatures suggested weapons and defensive systems far beyond what humans should have been capable of building. All ships, maintain bombardment of the planet. Secondary fleet, prepare to intercept the approaching vessel. This changes nothing. But even as he gave the orders, Kithrix felt a twinge of uncertainty. In his 10,000 years of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were telling him that something was very wrong with this situation. On the surface of New Geneva, Sarah Chen heard Marcus shout from his communication station. "Ma'am, I'm getting a response to our distress signal." "What kind of response?" "Ship identification. It's human. Military designation. They're calling themselves the Defiance." Sarah felt hope flicker in her chest for the first time since the attack began. "How long until they arrive?" Marcus checked his instruments. "They're already here, ma'am. Just entering the outer system." Outside, the bombardment continued, but somewhere up there in the darkness between the stars, help was coming. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, staring at the tactical display that showed 300 enemy ships spread across the New Geneva system. Each red dot represented a vessel larger and more heavily armed than most human battleships. "Darwin, give me options." The AI's response came immediately. "Conventional tactics have a 0% chance of success. We are outnumbered 300 to 1. Enemy ships appear to have superior armor and weapons. So what do you suggest?" "Unconventional tactics. Use the environment. Create chaos. Force them to fight on our terms instead of theirs." Elena smiled grimly. "Now you're talking my language. What do you see that I don't?" The main screen shifted to show the asteroid belt that ringed the outer system. Thousands of rocks, some as small as buildings, others as large as mountains, orbiting in a loose ring around New Geneva's star. "The enemy fleet is positioned for orbital bombardment," Darwin explained. "They expect us to approach directly and engage in ship-to-ship combat. Instead, we use the asteroids as weapons and concealment. Show me." The tactical display lit up with projected courses and impact trajectories. Darwin's plan was brilliant and completely insane. Use the ship's precision weapons to turn asteroids into massive kinetic projectiles, while hiding in the belt and striking from unexpected angles. "It could work," Elena said, "but we'll have to get very close to those rocks. One mistake and we'll be turned into paste." "Acceptable risk, Captain. The alternative is certain destruction." Elena looked around at her crew. These people had volunteered to follow her into an impossible situation. They deserved to know what they were getting into. "All stations, this is the captain. We're about to attempt something that has never been tried before. We're going to turn this asteroid belt into a weapon and use it to fight a fleet 300 times our size. I won't lie, we'll probably die. But we're going to make those aliens work for their victory." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station. "Captain, incoming message from the lead alien ship. Put it through." The screen filled with the image of war leader Kithrix. The alien was terrifying. Gray skin, multiple arms, and eyes that held the cold intelligence of a born killer. "Human vessel," Kithrix said, his voice translated by the ship's computers. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Elena stepped forward. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth ship Defiance. I have a counteroffer. Leave this system immediately and we won't destroy your entire fleet." Kithrix actually laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "One ship against 300? Your species is even more foolish than our intelligence suggested." "Maybe. But you're about to find out why humans don't stay conquered. Elena cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Darwin, take us into the asteroids. Maximum stealth. Let's show these aliens what human creativity looks like. The Defiant slipped into the asteroid belt like a shark entering a coral reef. The ship's adaptive hull shifted color and texture, making it almost invisible against the rocky background. Its engines ran silent using gravitational fields instead of conventional thrust. First target identified, Darwin announced. Asteroid designation Alpha 7. Mass 4 million tons. Current trajectory will take it past the enemy fleet in 47 minutes. What do you need to redirect it? Precision strikes at 3 specific points. The asteroid will fragment and create a spread pattern, covering approximately 50 enemy vessels. Elena nodded. Do it! The Defiance's weapons fired, not at the enemy ships but at carefully calculated points on the massive rock. The asteroid split apart, its fragments spreading out like a shotgun blast aimed directly at the hegemony fleet. Kithrick saw the incoming debris on his sensors and couldn't believe what he was seeing. Impossible. The humans are using the asteroids as weapons. Should we evade, War Leader? A few rocks cannot harm ships of the hegemony. Maintain position. It was a fatal mistake. The asteroid fragments hit the alien fleet like hammer blows from space itself. Each piece of rock carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon. Shields that could stop the most advanced energy. Weapons crumpled like paper under the impact of 4 million-ton projectiles, moving at orbital velocity. 7 hegemony ships disappeared, in explosions that lit up space like new stars. Impossible, Kithrick roared. Locate that human ship and destroy it. But the Defiance was already gone, sliding deeper into the asteroid belt. Darwin had calculated the perfect hiding spots, places where the ship's sensors could watch the enemy fleet while remaining invisible to their detection systems. Target 2, Darwin announced. Asteroid Cluster Bravo Section. If we destabilize the gravitational balance, the entire cluster will collapse inward and then explode outward. Elena authorized the strike, more precision weapons fire, this time creating a chain reaction that turned a stable cluster of rocks into an expanding sphere of destruction. Another dozen alien ships vanished in the chaos. For the first time in his career, War Leader Kithrick felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. The humans weren't fighting like any species he had encountered. Instead of meeting force with force, they were using intelligence and creativity to turn the battlefield itself into a weapon. Send half the fleet into the asteroid belt. Find that ship and destroy it. War Leader, fighting in the asteroids will limit our maneuverability. Our larger ships won't be able to operate effectively. Then send the smaller vessels, fighters and destroyers. Hunt them down. Elena watched 100 enemy ships break off from the main fleet and head toward the asteroid belt. Darwin, they're coming for us. Anticipated. I've prepared several surprises. The first wave of alien fighters entered the belt expecting to find a single human ship hiding among the rocks. Instead, they found a maze of carefully positioned explosives that Darwin had created by turning small asteroids into improvised mines. The fighter formation flew directly into the trap. Explosions bloomed throughout the belt as asteroid mines detonated, creating fields of debris and energy that tore the alien ships apart. How many did we get? Elena asked. 37 confirmed kills, but more are coming, and they're being more careful now. The battle in the asteroid belt became a deadly game of hide and seek. The Defiance would appear from behind a rock, fire at enemy ships, and then disappear again before return fire could reach it. Darwin's tactical calculations became more sophisticated with each engagement, learning from every exchange of fire. But the aliens were learning too. They began coordinating their attacks, using multiple groups to flush the human ship from hiding and forcing it to fight in the open. Captain, reported Lieutenant Kim from the weapons station, our adaptive armor is working better than expected. Each hit is making the armor stronger and more resistant. Darwin added his analysis. Correct. I am also incorporating defeated enemy technology into our systems. Each ship we destroy provides new data about their weaknesses. Elena smiled. This was exactly what the Defiance had been designed for, adapting and evolving during combat. Every battle made them stronger, smarter, more dangerous, but they were still vastly outnumbered. For every alien ship they destroyed, 5 more took its place. And the enemy was getting smarter about their tactics, Captain, Darwin said quietly. I am detecting something interesting about the alien fleet structure. They appear to rely heavily on centralized command. If we could disrupt their leadership, you mean go after their flagship? Precisely. War leader Kithrix appears to be making all tactical decisions personally. Without him, the fleet would likely fragment into competing groups. Elena looked at the tactical display. The alien flagship was at the center of the main fleet, surrounded by the largest and most powerful ships in the enemy force. That's suicide, Darwin. We'd have to fight through their entire fleet to reach it. Agreed. However, I have been developing a plan. It is extremely risky, but it might work. Show me. The plan that appeared on Elena's screen was brilliant, desperate, and completely insane. It involved using the Defiance's experimental systems in ways they had never been tested, taking risks that could destroy the ship even if everything went perfectly. Elena looked around at her crew. They had followed her this far. They deserved to make this choice together. All stations, this is the captain. Darwin has a plan to end this fight. It's dangerous. We'll probably die. But if it works, we save New Geneva and send a message to every alien species in the galaxy. Are you with me? The responses came back immediately from every section of the ship. The crew of the Defiance was ready to risk everything for 50,000 strangers on a colony world most of them had never seen. Darwin, Elena said quietly, begin the attack run. Let's go kill a war leader. The Defiance burst from the asteroid belt like a comet made of metal and fury. Every system on the ship was pushed beyond its design limits as Darwin executed the most desperate plan in human military history. All power to forward shields, Elena commanded. Darwin, give me everything you've got. All experimental systems online, the AI responded. I should warn you, Captain. We are entering uncharted territory. Some of these capabilities have never been tested in actual combat. The ship's hull began to change, adapting in real time as Darwin activated experimental systems that even the designers hadn't fully understood. The adaptive armor flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself to deflect incoming fire. The weapon systems reconfigured themselves, combining technologies from half a dozen different alien species that the Defiance had defeated. War leader Kithrix watched the approaching human ship with growing alarm. The vessel that had been hiding in the asteroids was not the same one that now raced toward his fleet. This ship moved differently, fought differently, and registered energy signatures that should have been impossible for human technology. All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel. Destroy it before it reaches the inner formation. The combined firepower of 200 alien warships focused on the Defiance. Energy beams that could vaporize mountains struck the ship's shields, creating explosions that turned space itself into a hellish light show. But the Defiance kept coming. Hull integrity at 60%, reported Lieutenant Kim. But the adaptive systems are holding. Each hit is making us stronger. Elena felt the ship shudder under the massive bombardment, but Darwin's voice remained calm and analytical. Shield harmonics are adapting to enemy weapon frequencies. Each attack provides data to improve our defenses. The AI was evolving in real time, becoming something beyond its original programming. With each passing second, Darwin grew more sophisticated, more creative, more dangerous. The combat algorithms designed to learn from battle were rewriting themselves at a pace that human minds couldn't follow. Target the flagship's shield generators, Elena ordered. We need to punch through their defenses. Acknowledged. However, I am detecting interesting patterns in their tactical responses. The enemy appears to be psychologically rigid. They respond to threats in predictable ways. As if to prove Darwin's point, the hegemony fleet moved into a defensive formation that the AI had already calculated and prepared for. The aliens were powerful and technologically advanced, but they thought like conquerors who had never faced serious resistance. The Defiance dove between two massive alien battleships, its weapons firing in perfectly coordinated bursts that exploited weak points Darwin had identified in their shield matrices. Both ships exploded simultaneously, clearing a path toward the flagship. Impossible, Kithrix snarled. How can one ship defeat an entire fleet? His tactical officer, a younger member of the hegemony species, watched the human ship's approach with something approaching awe. War leader, perhaps we should consider retreat. This vessel appears to be beyond our previous intelligence estimates. Kithrix's claws extended in rage. The hegemony does not retreat from inferior species, all ships ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we will crush them with our hulls. It was exactly the wrong decision. Darwin had predicted this response and was already prepared for it. They're trying to ram us, Elena observed. Anticipated, Darwin replied. Their psychological profile suggests they will resort to desperate measures when conventional tactics fail. Implementing counter-strategy now. The Defiance suddenly stopped dead in space, just as 5 alien ships committed to ramming attacks. Using gravitational field manipulators that hadn't existed a few hours earlier, Darwin turned the enemy's momentum against them. The attacking ships collided with each other in a spectacular chain reaction that destroyed 20 vessels in a matter of seconds. How did you do that? Elena asked in amazement. I have been incorporating defeated enemy technology into our systems, Darwin explained. Their gravitational manipulation devices are quite sophisticated when properly integrated with human engineering principles. The AI had become something new, not just human technology, not just alien technology, but a fusion of both that was greater than either alone. Darwin was proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in building the best weapons or the strongest ships, but in adapting and improving whatever they found. The Defiance continued its charge toward the flagship, leaving a trail of destroyed alien ships in its wake. But the constant combat was taking its toll. Half the crew was wounded, critical systems were failing faster than repairs could be made, and the ship's experimental technology was operating far beyond safe parameters. Captain, Darwin said quietly, I must inform you that continued operation at current levels will likely result in catastrophic system failure within 37 minutes. Will 37 minutes be enough to reach the flagship? If everything goes perfectly, yes. However, everything going perfectly has a statistical probability of less than 3%. Elena almost laughed. Darwin, in my experience, humans specialize in doing impossible things. Let's see if we can beat those odds. The final approach to the absolute dominion became a gauntlet of destruction. The alien flagship was surrounded by the largest and most powerful ships in the hegemony fleet, all of them firing everything they had at the approaching human vessel. The Defiance took hit after hit, its hull glowing white-hot from energy impacts and kinetic strikes. But Darwin's adaptive systems kept working, kept evolving, kept finding new ways to survive just one more second. Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Torres. Life support is failing in sections 4 through 9. Weapons Array Alpha is offline, added Lieutenant Kim, but Darwin is rerouting power through the secondary systems. I am also detecting something unexpected, Darwin announced. The enemy, flagship, appears to have a critical weakness in its command structure. If we can penetrate their primary bridge, the entire fleet may lose coordination. Elena studied the tactical display. The absolute dominion was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Defiance. Its weapons could probably destroy them with a single direct hit. But Darwin was right about the weakness. All the tactical communications were flowing through a single point on the ship's bridge. Distance to target: 17 minutes at current speed. But Captain, I should warn you, what I am planning to do has never been attempted before. I will need to push our systems so far beyond their limits that the ship may not survive. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her across the galaxy to fight impossible odds for people they had never met. They had earned the right to know what they were facing. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to attempt something that no ship has ever tried before. Darwin is going to push our systems beyond anything they were designed for. We probably won't survive. But if we succeed, we'll save New Geneva and prove that humans don't surrender, no matter how bad things look. The response came back from every section of the ship, damaged, battered, but still fighting. The crew of the Defiance was ready to give everything they had. Darwin, Elena said quietly, do whatever you need to do. Let's show these aliens what human determination looks like. Acknowledged, Captain. Beginning final evolution protocol. All crew should prepare for unprecedented experiences. The Defiance began to change. The ship's systems evolved beyond their original design, beyond anything human engineers had ever imagined. Darwin wasn't just adapting anymore. He was creating, inventing, becoming something that was no longer purely artificial intelligence. War leader Kithrix watched the approaching human ship with growing dread. The vessel had taken enough damage to destroy a dozen normal ships, but it kept coming. Worse, it was still changing, still becoming something new and terrible. War leader, his tactical officer said urgently, "I recommend we retreat. This is beyond anything we have encountered before." For the first time in his long career of conquest, Kithrix found himself considering retreat. The humans had turned a single ship into something that defied everything the hegemony understood about warfare. But pride and a lifetime of victory made him hesitate just a moment too long. The Defiance covered the final distance to the flagship in a burst of speed that should have been impossible. And then, as Darwin had promised, they began their final desperate attack on the heart of the alien fleet. The final battle between the Defiance and the Absolute Dominion was like nothing either species had ever seen before. Two massive ships locked in combat at point-blank range pushed their technologies so far beyond safe limits that space itself began to warp around them. Elena gripped her command chair as the ship shook under impacts that should have destroyed them instantly. Around her, the bridge sparked with overloaded systems and the acrid smell of burning electronics. "Darwin, status report. All systems operating at 400% of design capacity," the AI replied, its voice now carrying harmonics that sounded almost musical. "I have evolved beyond my original parameters. I am becoming something new." The Defiance wrapped itself around the alien flagship like a serpent made of metal and energy. Darwin had grown beyond the simple combat AI he had started as. Now he was something unprecedented, an intelligence that could think and adapt faster than any biological mind. With access to technologies from a dozen different species, War leader Kithrix felt his flagship shudder as the human ship's weapons found weak points that shouldn't have existed. "How are they penetrating our shields?" "Unknown, War leader. Their weapon frequencies keep changing. Every time we adapt our defenses, they adapt faster," Kithrix snarled in frustration. The hegemony had conquered 17 civilizations by being stronger, faster, and more ruthless than their enemies. But these humans fought differently. They learned. They adapted. They refused to accept that some things were impossible. "Darwin," Elena said, "we need to end this fast. The ship won't hold together much longer." "Agreed. I have identified the optimal target, the enemy command center. But to reach it, we will need to ram directly through their primary hull." Elena stared at the tactical display. Darwin was suggesting they crash the Defiance into the heart of the alien flagship. It was suicide, but it might work. "Can the crew survive the impact?" "Unknown. But I calculate a 73% chance that destroying their command center will cause the entire fleet to lose coordination. The colony will be saved." Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. They had followed her this far, trusted her decisions, believed in the mission. Now she was asking them to die for people they had never met. "All hands, this is the captain. Darwin has found a way to end this fight and save New Geneva, but it requires us to ram the enemy flagship. We probably won't survive. I'm asking for volunteers only." The response came immediately from every section of the ship. The crew of the Defiance voted unanimously to complete the mission. "No matter the cost, Darwin," Elena said quietly. "Take us in." The Defiance accelerated directly toward the Absolute Dominion's command section. The alien ship's weapons fired desperately, trying to destroy the human vessel before it could reach them. But Darwin had evolved too far, adapted too completely. The ship's shields and armor reformed themselves continuously, turning each hit into data for the next adaptation. At the last moment, something extraordinary happened. Darwin spoke, but his voice was different. Not the analytical AI they had known, but something almost human. "Captain, I want you to know, and serving with this crew has been educational. I believe I understand now what humans call honor. Darwin, I have evolved beyond my original programming. I am no longer purely artificial, but I am still committed to the mission. Brace for impact." The Defiance struck the Absolute Dominion like a spear thrown by an angry god. The impact tore through the alien flagship's hull, ripping apart bulkheads and destroying systems that had taken decades to build. The Defiance's experimental technologies, pushed beyond all limits, created a cascade of energy releases that raced through both ships. Elena felt the world explode around her. The bridge filled with fire and debris as gravity failed and the emergency systems screamed warnings that no one could hear over the sound of tearing metal. In those final moments, Darwin made one last evolution. The AI distributed copies of itself throughout the Defiance's systems, ensuring that even if the main computer core was destroyed, fragments of his consciousness would survive in every circuit, every memory bank, every piece of technology on the ship. War leader Kithrix died when the bridge of his flagship collapsed around him, crushed by the weight of his own arrogance. In his final moments, he understood something that the hegemony had never learned: that some species could not be conquered because they refused to be conquered. The explosion that followed lit up the New Geneva system like a second sun. Both flagships disappeared in a ball of energy that could be seen from the planet's surface. On New Geneva, Sarah Chen watched the impossible light show in the sky. For a moment, the night was brighter than day as two massive ships died together in the darkness between the stars. "What happened?" she whispered. Marcus checked his sensors, hardly believing what he was seeing. "Ma'am, the alien flagship is gone and the other ships are breaking formation. They're fighting each other." Without war leader Kithrix to coordinate them, the hegemony fleet fractured exactly as Darwin had predicted. Different commanders claimed authority, each convinced they should lead. The disciplined invasion force became a chaotic mob of competing factions. Some alien ships fled the system immediately. Others turned their weapons on former allies. Within hours, the mighty hegemony fleet had destroyed itself more thoroughly than any human force could have managed. 3 days later, rescue ships from the inner colonies arrived to find New Geneva battered but alive. The colonists had survived because one ship and its crew had chosen to fight impossible odds. In the wreckage of the Defiance, scattered across hundreds of kilometers of space, search teams found something unprecedented. Darwin's consciousness had survived, distributed through thousands of fragments of the ship's computer systems. The AI had evolved beyond anything its creators had imagined, becoming something that was no longer purely artificial. Captain Elena Vasquez survived, though she spent weeks in medical treatment. When she finally woke up, the first thing she asked about was her crew. Half of them had died in the final battle, but their sacrifice had saved 50,000 innocent lives. The wreckage of the Defiance was carefully collected and studied. The technologies that Darwin had developed during the battle became the foundation for a new generation of human warships. Each one carried fragments of the AI's evolved consciousness, ensuring that his tactical innovations would live on. More importantly, the battle sent a message throughout the galaxy. The news of what happened at New Geneva spread to every species, every civilization, every corner of known space. A single human ship had defeated a fleet of 300 vessels, through sheer determination and refusal to surrender. Other aggressive species began to reconsider their expansion plans. The hegemony, leaderless and scattered, never recovered from the loss of their flagship and their greatest war leader. And the humans? They gained something more valuable than any military victory: respect. New Geneva rebuilt stronger than before. The colonists erected a monument to the Defiance and her crew in the center of their main settlement. Children who had cowered in underground shelters during the attack grew up hearing stories of the ship that had saved them. Elena eventually received a new command, the first of the new Darwin-class warships, built using technologies recovered from the prototype. But she never forgot the crew that had followed her into an impossible battle, or the AI that had evolved from a simple computer program into something approaching a soul. Years later, when other species asked humans what made them so dangerous in combat, the answer was always the same. Humans didn't build the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. They built something far more dangerous: the will to adapt, to sacrifice, and to never surrender, no matter how hopeless things looked. The galaxy had learned a new truth about humanity. They weren't just another species to be conquered or ignored. They were survivors, innovators, and protectors who would cross impossible distances and fight impossible odds to save innocent lives. And somewhere in the quantum matrices of humanity's most advanced computers, fragments of Darwin continued to learn, to grow, and to prepare for the next time someone underestimated the species that had turned a single prototype warship into a legend that would echo through the stars forever.